Welcome to the Genetic Code. I'm your host, Jeanette Collins. This podcast is designed to take you one episode at a time on an intimate journey of your own personal transformation. Each podcast will have tools and techniques for you to practice in your daily life to create the very best version of you. Let's get started. Attention. Welcome back, everyone. So last time we talked all about awareness. This next step is all about your attention. Now that you've been practicing becoming very aware of how you think and what you feel, and you are much more aware of old thoughts, patterns, and what emotions you've been living by, we can now direct all of your attention to your inner world and your behaviors with as much drive and tenacity as someone who loves to watch birds. Not much will escape the attention of someone, for example, who does love to study birds. So let's use this analogy to understand and practice this next step into your own personal transformation. As you go through your everyday living and you've become more aware that you have behaviors and patterns you want to change, it shines a spotlight on the ways to direct your attention. When you wake up in the morning, how do you feel? What do you feel as you become conscious again into this new day? Remember to not judge what you feel. Just become aware of it and pay attention to the behaviors that you notice start automatically. For me, when I began doing this practice, I would notice that upon waking, I didn't feel much of anything. And then it was like all of a sudden, this heavy, all-consuming feeling would come over me. And for me, it was usually dread. I didn't know at the time what to do with it, so I would push it away and practice pretending I was fine. There was one big problem. I wasn't feeling fine at all. And as the day went on, it got heavier, and I would find myself saying things or acting in ways that made me feel even more stuck and more dreadful. It felt like a cycle of events that went in this perpetual circle, and I knew that by the time I would go to bed, I'd be so tired of all these heavy, sad, abusive thoughts and feelings I had been in all day that I would need something to just numb me out until I could go to sleep without thinking anymore. My drug of choice was the TV. I would turn it on, turn it way down, and let something really frivolous just play until I fell asleep from pure exhaustion. Then I'd wake up again the next day hoping to feel better, but usually it was all just started all over again like a bad movie. I tried everything to change. I knew I wasn't lazy or undetermined, but the only tool I had at the time were old and never worked. But I didn't know any other way than the ways that I was raised to deal with the stuff that happened in my life. And now not all the ways that I was taught to deal with things in my life were necessarily bad, but some definitely needed tweaking. I had a mother that whenever she ran into a problem or things were too much for her, she'd go into the bathroom and pray. And I knew that she was praying, not because she told me, but because I was a curious, observant child, and I looked under the door to see what she was really doing in there. I knew no one used the bathroom that often. So in my older years, in my 20s, I turned to prayer, because that's what I had seen, to help me find my steps to come out of all my emotional traumas. There was just a small flaw. I had also been trained that prayer was to plead for help like a victim to some man in the sky and hope that compassion was on his agenda for the day. I spent far too long begging and promising that I would do just about anything if God would just make me feel happy and joyful and alive inside. Because as far as my own evidence went, I was failing. This belief in a God like this only perpetuated my inner story that deep down I really wasn't worth a thing, because each day I continued to feel just as awful and dreadful, and my self-abuse at not being able to be as happy as I believed everyone else was got a lot worse. This was a deep emotional pattern that was being used by me every second of every day, because I didn't know anything else. So let's jump forward just a little bit. Like a good scientist, because everything I did failed, I began to ask a different question. What do I need to know that I don't know that it can assist me in changing how I feel for good? I didn't want just a cotton candy fix, as I call them. You know the ones I mean. You feel a little bit better for as long as it takes cotton candy to melt in your mouth. Then you need more, or the old stuff starts in on you again. This question began to occupy my attention. I knew there was something, a lot of somethings, that I didn't know, that would help me to achieve a better way to live inside than what I had been doing. I could feel it deep down, even though I had no idea how to get to it or how to do it. If any of my story sounds familiar or you can relate, then the steps I'm sharing with you, if you do them, will help you change your life. I usually tell my clients, hey, I can't pee for you, so if you want to feel better and live better, you'll need to go empty your own bladder. I took care of mine and I feel great. We always laugh, and at the same time, we can see the truth in those words. You know, you won't get anything if you don't change you and how you respond to the inside of yourself. So pay attention to what you think about. Notice if your attention goes to stories from your past and you rehash them for hours and hours or days. Remember, the past doesn't always mean a long time ago. It means anything previous to now. I am not suggesting ignoring things either that come up. Just like watching a bird, pay attention to where your thoughts go. How critical or mean are they? How much time are you spending reliving an old memory or a pattern? When you observe birds in nature, you're watching for the patterns they use to make their lives work for them. How and where they go to get all their supplies to build a nest. What sounds they make when they want to express their needs. How they respond to predators and danger. You learn a lot by paying attention and doing it with a curious mind. So let's use that for ourselves. So when you begin to pay attention to the patterns and behaviors you have, can you do it with a curious mind? Can you set the judgments aside for now? If you can, your discoveries will be far more enjoyable and productive. So paying attention to your reactions to different daily events. Maybe you're someone who doesn't like driving in traffic. Notice what you're thinking and feeling when somebody cuts you off or they're driving too slow. Pay attention to the feelings and thoughts inside you as these events are happening. Do you go straight to anger? Does your breathing change? What do you believe about this moment? What beliefs do you have running in your mind? Maybe there are things like, I don't like drivers. People are rude. I don't know. There's a lot of it, a lot of beliefs that we have, but the belief doesn't really matter. Just paying attention to the fact that that belief that you keep reinforcing so that you can stay in your old stuck emotional patterns, that belief you've invested so much energy in is dictating your emotions and behaviors. When this is happening, you're a slave to your own thoughts and patterns. You're not free. You're not really free to choose. You give it up when you go unconscious and react to the environment based on a belief that it should be different. As you pay attention with curiosity to what's going on inside you, you begin to bring energy or power back into your life because you've interrupted a reaction by paying attention and being curious about you. Now, as you continue to just pay attention and not curse it or blame it, just observe your inner world and all that's happening and notice what emotions are being generated. Now you have created, by your awareness and your attention, a clean moment in time where you're truly free to respond to the environment in a conscious way. Maybe you're noticing that as you just paid attention to your inner thoughts about the traffic and didn't engage in a dialogue about it, you just observed it. Maybe you noticed that instant anger feeling wasn't really there so much. How much quieter did the thoughts get, or gentler, as you just observed? What's going on in your body now? How is your breathing? Your attention on just being an observer has freed up energy for you. It may be small at first, but if you do this successfully, you will notice you feel a little lighter. This is because you're now beginning to practice becoming a master over your own emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, and not an unconscious slave. The act of just observing does change the chemical output in your brain. So instead of being angry and drumming up a ton of adrenaline and cortisol, your body can produce chemicals like oxytocin, which is a happier hormone. because your ability in the moment to choose your response tells your body and your brain to create a better way of feeling to live by. And that makes sense. Whenever you have the feeling of freedom, you feel empowered. And when you feel empowered, you don't want to lose that feeling. So now as you practice paying attention and observing your inner thoughts and emotions, your brain and body begin to become more coherent. And coherent means unified, or forming a whole. Or in other words, you're not fighting against you so much anymore. Your thoughts and feelings are more aligned. So just by you not reacting to your world and circumstances, and you are taking time to observe what's going on inside you without being critical but curious, you become a little more at peace. When this happens, you're opening a door inside you that allows you to decide and choose your responses to life instead of having reactions to events that you aren't conscious to choose. As I began to discover that there was real power for me in becoming aware of myself and my behaviors, and I started paying attention with the curiosity of a child, I entered a new paradigm. A new paradigm means I was entering a new pattern, a pattern I was choosing more consciously. By observation of my behaviors and emotions, I subtly was leaving the paradigm of self-loathing and dreadful thoughts and behaviors to one where I wasn't really feeling those things quite so big for the moment. I don't know about you, but when I do something and the results bring me a feeling of relief or even something neutral, I want to make that feeling happen again. So when you repeat the behavior with the new thoughts and responses over and over again, day after day, moment by moment, you're beginning to rewrite a new story, a new life, and a better way of being. The old habits and patterns of your past are being consciously rewritten to a higher vibration, a more loving way to treat yourself and others. You are more and more free in your abilities to choose what you want your life to look like and feel like, and how you now want to respond to events or not respond, and how your thoughts are becoming more about love and kindness and forgiveness and less about your old behaviors. With practice, paying attention to what you're thinking and feeling and being, you're able to choose a more loving way to respond. Your brain and body will begin to create more oxytocin, the happy hormone, to confirm your new way of being. So when I started using these tools years ago, I got to know a really better side of me. And I got to know me a lot better. Parts of me I liked, and some of the parts I didn't. I have a deep, fierce love of my freedom, and that pushed me more than anything to find and work with myself to create healing and wholeness within myself so I could feel happier when I opened my eyes in the morning. I desired to feel proud of myself and my efforts, and I needed to see results of a positive nature in me with all the work I was doing. And I finally was. It was scary sometimes because I started paying attention to my inner world. Everything that I was taught or learned was in question. Some things that I thought were like solid and unmovable beliefs were shaken down, and that's okay. I needed somebody to tell me that was actually okay, because it scared me. I was wondering if I was okay. But I started to learn that as I cleaned my inner house, my world within myself, that a lot of my beliefs and patterns and behaviors had zero foundational support within me. I did them purely out of habit. For example, I knew this woman, and she told me a story about her great-great-grandma. And her great-great-grandma and her mom and her grandma and all the way down through the generations, whenever they cooked a ham or a roast, they would cut a little off the top and a little off the bottom, and then they'd cook it. For years, the women in the family cooked the meat this way, until one day, the great-granddaughter asked why was it important to cut the tops and the bottoms off the roast before cooking it. Well, nobody had the answer. Nobody knew. So they started to trace down by reading journals and diaries and going back to find out why did we have to cut that off? What did it make the roast better? Did it make dinner better? Did it cook faster? What was going on here? And the answer when they got down to it was this. Great-grandma never had a pan big enough to hold the whole roast, so she trimmed it to fit in her pan. Isn't that crazy? It's amazing. That's just one really weird pattern that just got passed on from generation to generation. And nobody asked the question until finally somebody did. So how many beliefs, patterns, and behaviors are you living by because you were taught to live by it? Like the example of the roast, and they're not necessary or even valuable to you or to your life or your happiness. It's a good thing to examine everything within yourself. What you don't know yet, set it aside and continue with the steps that you do know. Being aware, paying attention, and creating a more loving process for you to follow so that you become a greater version of you and a more loving version of you. And you're not just practicing a pattern of behavior because it's been brought down through the generations and you don't even know why. So let's recap this. Now that you've chosen to become more aware of your inner world, and now you are beginning to pay close attention to what your reactions have been, what you're thinking before you react, and just how unloving your thoughts about you and others have been, now you can see that you have choice, the new ability to change the way you're thinking and feeling, and to consciously decide on a new way of being and a new life for yourself. I hope the tools that I'm giving each week will benefit you as you put them into practice in your own life. They have changed mine forever. And that's my goal for doing these podcasts. Thank you for listening. I invite you to take this week to practice becoming more conscious and more aware, paying more attention, being more curious, living by the tools that are being guided in each of these podcasts, and choosing to change your thoughts and feelings and change your life and be a part of this wonderful miracle called life. Thank you for joining me on this podcast. Please share this with others and tune in next week for another chance to learn, grow, and become a part of the greatest journey on earth, the journey to transform yourself, to empower yourself, and to extend that love to the world. You are worth it.